Hello and welcome to a one-take toilet top audiobook production. This series book is Chocky by John Wyndham, as read by the bathroom reader. I am covering for the Plurality Report, who firmly believes that Brian Aldiss can join his book-spoiling butt buddy Robert McFarlane in hell as far as he's concerned. Chapter 1. It was in the spring of the year that Matthew reached 12 that I first became aware of Chocky. Late April, I think, or possibly early May. Anyway, I am sure it was the spring because on that Saturday afternoon I was out in the garden shed unenthusiastically oiling the mower for labors to come when I heard Matthew's voice speaking close outside the window. It surprised me. I had no idea he was anywhere about until I heard him say, on a note of distinct irritation, and apropos, apparently, of nothing, "I don't know why. It's just the way things are." I assumed that he had brought one of his friends into the garden to play, and that the question which prompted his remark had been asked out of earshot. I listened for the reply, but there was none. Presently, after a pause, Matthew went on, rather more patiently. "Well, the time the world takes to turn round is a day, and that's 24 hours, and—" He broke off, as if some interruption, though it was quite inaudible to me. Then he repeated, "I don't know why, and I don't see why 32 hours would be more sensible. Anyway, 24 hours do make a day. Everybody knows that, and 7 days make a week." Again he appeared to be cut short. Once more he protested. "I don't see why 7 is a sillier number than 8. Evidently there was another inaudible interruption. Then he went on. "Well, who wants to divide a week into halves and quarters anyway? What'd be the point of it? A week just is 7 days, and 4 weeks ought to make a month. Only usually it's 30 days or 31 days. No, it's never 32 days. You've got a sort of thing about 32. Yes, I can see that, but we don't want a week of 8 days. Besides, the world goes round the sun in 365 days, and nobody can do anything that will make that turn into proper halves and quarters." At that point, the peculiarity of this one-sided conversation aroused my curiosity enough to make me put my head cautiously out of the open window. The garden was sunny, and that side of the shed was sheltered and warm. Matthew was seated on an upturned seed tray, leaning back against the brick wall of the shed just under the window, so that I was looking down on the top of his fair-haired head. He seemed to be gazing straight across the lawn and into the bushes beyond. There was no sign of a companion, nor of any place one could be hidden. Matthew, however, went on. "There are 12 of these months in a year, so—" He broke off again, his head a little tilted, as though he were listening. I listened too, but there was not a whisper of any other voice to be heard. "It's not just stupid," he objected. "It's like that because no kind of same-sized months would fit into a year properly, even if—" He broke off once more, but this time the source of the interruption was far from inaudible. Colin, the neighbor's boy, had shouted from the next garden. Matthew's air of preoccupation dropped away instantly. He jumped up with a friendly answering whoop and ran off across the lawn towards the gap in the dividing hedge. I turned back to my oiling, puzzled but reassured by the sound of normal boyish noises from next door. I put the incident out of my mind for the time being, but it recurred to me that evening when the children had both gone upstairs to bed, and I found myself vaguely troubled by it. Not so much by the conversation, for, after all, there is nothing unusual in any child holding muttered exchanges with him or herself, as by the form of it, the consistency of its assumption that a second party was involved, and the improbable subject for argument. I was prompted after a time to ask, "Darling, have you noticed anything odd? No, I don't exactly mean odd. Anything unusual about Matthew lately?" Mary lowered her knitting and looked at me over it. "Oh, so you have you? Though I agree odd isn't exactly the word. Was he listening to nothing or talking to himself?" "Talking, well, both, really. How long has this been going on?" She considered. "The first time I noticed it would be, I suppose about 2 or 3 weeks ago." I nodded. It did not greatly surprise me that I had not encountered Matthew in the mood before. I saw little of either of the children during the week. She went on. "It didn't seem worth bothering about. Just another of those crazes children get, you know. Like the time he was being a car and had to steer himself round corners and change gear on hills and put on the brake whenever he stopped. Fortunately, that wore off quite soon. Probably this will, too." There was more hope than conviction in her tone. "You're not worried about him?" She smiled. "Oh, good gracious, no. He's perfectly well. What I am more worried about is us." "Us?" "Well, it begins to look to me rather as if we may have got another Piff or something like her in the family." I felt and probably looked dismayed. I shook my head. "Oh, no, don't say it, not another Piff," I protested. Mary and I had met 16 years before and had married a year later. Our meeting had been, according to the view one takes of these things, either entirely fortuitous or else worked out with an unnecessarily cunning deviousness by destiny. At any rate, there had been nothing conventional about it, and as far as either of us could recollect, we had never been introduced. It was the year in which, as a reward for several previous years' conscientious application to duty, I had risen to the status of junior partner in the firm of Ainsley and Talboy, chartered accountants of Bedford Square. At this distance of time, I am not sure whether it was celebration of the achievement or the fading effect of my work that had led to it, which determined me to spend my summer holidays as far from my routine concerns as I could get. Probably it was a bit of both. At any rate, the urge to fresh woods and pastures new was strongly upon me. The world was, in theory, open to me. In practice, however, it was narrowed by considerations of cost, the time available, and the travel allowance then in force, until it appeared not to extend beyond Europe. Still, there is quite a lot of Europe. At first I toyed with the idea of an Aegean cruise. The prospect of sunlit isles set in a cerulean sea dazzled me, and there were siren songs in my ears. Unfortunately, it seemed, upon investigation, all berths on such cruises, except those at a prohibitive first-class rate, had been booked since the previous October. Then I had thoughts of setting out vagabond-wise, wandering through the countryside, care and fancy-free, but on reflection it seemed to me that an unknowledgeable traveler with no more linguistic equipment than indifferent schoolboy French would be unlikely to make the best use of the limited time. This brought me, as it has brought many thousands of others, to considering the merits of a tour. After all, one would be guided through many interesting places on the way. I reconsidered Greece and discovered it would take a long time to get there and back by road, even at hundreds of miles a day. In the end, I reluctantly postponed the glories of Greece for exploration at a future date and contemplated the grandeurs of Rome, which were, it seemed, much more readily available. For Mary Bosworth, that had been a time of hiatus. She had come down from London University with, she hoped, a degree in history, and was still wondering how best she could employ it, if indeed she had it. With her friend Melissa Campley, she decided that, after the constrictions of exam syllabuses, the gap might be filled by a holiday abroad which would expand their minds. There was some difference of opinion on the location most likely to do this efficiently. Mary had favored the idea of Yugoslavia, which was then cautiously setting its door more ajar to tourists from the West. Melissa had inclined to Rome as the destination, partly because she disapproved of communism on principle, but more because she envisaged the journey to Rome as a form of pilgrimage. Mary's doubts on the validity of a pilgrimage conducted by tourist coach she brushed aside. Such a pilgrimage, with a guide to improve your knowledge of the world as you traveled, was, she pointed out, certainly no less valid, and in several ways more commendable, than a pilgrimage by cavalcade, enlivened en route with dubious stories. The argument had eventually been settled by the travel agency, when it warned Mary of mysterious delays in the granting of Yugoslavian visas just then. So Rome it was to be. 2 days before they were due to leave, Melissa went down with mumps. Mary, after ringing up a number of friends and finding none of them willing to take Melissa's place at such short notice, had eventually, and somewhat reluctantly, presented herself to take her place, unaccompanied, on a tour not of her own choice. Thus, it was by a series of hitches and second bests that Mary and I, with 25 others, had come to form the complement of a startling pink and orange coach, which, with the words "Go Places Tours Ltd" in gleaming golden letters on its side, trundled us southwards across Europe. We never got to Rome. After spending an uncomfortable night at an indifferent hotel a few miles from Lake Como, where the accommodation was inadequate and the food disagreeable, we woke one benign-looking morning, with the sun just clearing the mist from the Lombardy hills, to find ourselves stranded. Our courier, our driver, and our coach itself had all vanished overnight. An agitated council resulted in the sending of an urgent telegram to the head office of Go Places Tours Limited. It brought no reply. During the course of the day, tempers deteriorated, not only those of the tourists, but of the hotel proprietor as well. He had, it appeared, another coach party booked for that night. The party duly arrived, and chaos took over. In the disputes which followed, it became obvious that Mary and I, the only two unattached members of our party, were not going to stand a chance of beds, so we, during the evening, bagged 2 moderately easy chairs in the restaurant and stuck to them. They were at least better than sleeping on the floor. By the following morning, there was still no answer from Go Places. A second and more urgent message was dispatched. After some delay, we managed to get coffee and rolls. "This," I said to Mary as we breakfasted, "is not going to get us anywhere." "What do you think has happened?" she asked. I shrugged. "At a guess, I'd say Go Places has gone bust, that our 2 were tipped off about it somehow, and chose the opportunity to make off with the coach in order to flog it." "You mean it's no good our waiting here?" "Not a bit, I'd say. I let that register..." "Not a bit, I'd say. I let that register, and then asked, 'Have you got any money?' "Not enough to get home with, I'm afraid. About £5 or £6 and nearly 4,000 lira. I don't expect to need anything much," she said. "Nor me. I've got about 10 and a few lira. What do you say to seeing what we can do?" She looked round. Every other member of our party within sight seemed to be engaged in ill-tempered argument or oppressed by gloom. "All right," she agreed. We set out, carrying our suitcases, and sat by the roadside until a bus came along. In the small town which was its destination, we found a railway station, and took tickets for Milan. The consul there did not welcome us, but eventually he relaxed enough to advance us the money to cover our fares home, second class. We married the following spring. It turned out to be quite an affair. There were so many Bosworths that I had a feeling of being engulfed. My own father and mother had both been dead some years, and I have few close relatives, so that the Gore side of the ceremony was supported only scantily by my best man, Alan Froome, an uncle and aunt, a couple of cousins, my senior partner, and a scatter of friends. The Bosworth assembly practically filled the rest of the church. As well as Mary's parents, there were her eldest sister Janet, with her husband and her 4 children, displaying evidence that there would soon be a 5th. Her next eldest sister, Patience, with her 3, her brothers Edward, Ted, and Francis, Frank, with their wives and seemingly innumerable children. A host of uncles, aunts, and cousins, and a mob of friends and acquaintances, all apparently gifted with such fecundity that the place resembled a combined infant school and creche. My father-in-law, having no further daughters to dispose of, was minded to do the occasion in style, and did, exhaustingly. It was with a feeling akin to convalescence that we caught up with the previous year's intentions of spending our honeymoon partly in Yugoslavia and partly amid the Grecian islands. From it we came back to take up residence in a small house in Cheshunt, a strategic position for easy contact with most elements of the Bosworth ganglion. Even when we were buying the house, I had, I recall, a sense slightly of misgiving and intimation that I was not taking the wisest course, but at the time I put it down to my own prejudice. I was unfamiliar with clan life. I had not been brought up to it, and what I had seen of it had little appeal. But for Mary's sake, I determined to do my best to qualify as an acceptable associate member. She was accustomed to it. Moreover, I told myself, it would help her to feel less lonely when I was away from home. The intention was good, but as things turned out, it was a mistake. It soon became clear to me, and I fear to most of the rest, that I am not first-class clan material. Though even so, I suppose I might in time have found myself a niche among them had it not been for other factors. During our first year there, Mary's sister Janet produced her 5th, and was heard to speak in favor of 6 as a good round number. Her other sister, Patience, was well on the way to completing her quartet. An additional aunthood was thrust upon Mary by her brother Frank, and she received several invitations to act as godmother, but she had failed to detect any indication that there was to be a baby of her own. Our second wedding anniversary approached and passed, still without any sign. Mary consulted another doctor, and, unconvinced by him, appealed to a specialist. He, too, told her there was nothing for her to worry about, but worry she did. I, for my own part, felt no great urgency. We were both young, we had plenty of time before us. Where was the need for hurry? Indeed, I did not dislike the idea of a few more years of freedom before we trammeled ourselves with family cares, and said as much to Mary. She agreed, but unconvincingly. She contrived to give the impression that it was sweet of me to pretend not to mind when she knew I did. I could not press the point further for fear of seeming to protest too much. I don't understand women. Nobody does, least of all themselves. I don't know, and nor do they, for instance, how far this compulsion that most of them have to produce a baby as soon as possible after marriage is attributable to a straight biological urge, and what percentages of it can be more justly credited to other factors such as conformity with people's expectations, the desire to prove that one is normal, the belief that it will establish status, a sense of personal achievement, the symbol of one's maturity, a feeling of solidarity, the obligation of holding one's own in competition with the neighbors. Nevertheless, whatever the proportions of these ingredients and other trace elements, they compound to build up a formidable pressure. It is not the least use pointing out that some of the world's most influential women, Elizabeth I, Florence Nightingale, for instance, would actually have lost status had they become mums. In fact, it is much wiser not to try. Babies, in a world that already has far too many, remain desirable. What a misanthrope. It began to worry me a lot. She frets about it, I confided to Alan Froome, who had been my best man. It's not necessary. The specialist assures her that there's nothing wrong. Me too. The confounded thing is this constant social pressure all the time. The whole family circle is baby-ridden. They talk and think about nothing else. Her sisters keep on having them, so do her brothers' wives, and all her married friends, and every time it happens it rubs it in that she doesn't. Each new baby that comes along makes her feel more inadequate and inferior until I don't know, and I'm sure she no longer knows, how much she wants a baby for itself, and how far it has become a sort of challenge. All the time she's over a sort of forced draft. She's in a circle... She's in a circle where it's a kind of competition in which every married woman is considered ipso facto an entrant, which makes it damned hard on a non-starter. It might not matter so much if she were the independent sort, but she isn't really. She's happier conforming, and the pressure to conform is terrific, only she can't. The whole thing is getting her down, and that's getting me down. Alan said, "Do you think you're getting quite the right slant on this, old man? I mean, does it matter how far her desire for a baby is inherent, and how much it is being stepped up by the environment? Surely the point is that she has it, and she has it very strongly. It seems to me there's only one thing to be done about that." "But damn it, we've tried, and we've taken just about all the advice there is." "Well, then it looks to me as if the only thing you can do is take the alternative, don't you think?" So we had adopted Matthew. For a time he seemed to be the answer. Mary adored him, and he certainly gave her plenty to do, and he enabled her to talk babies on an equal footing with the rest. Or was it? Well, not quite, perhaps. She began to get an impression that some babies confer a little more equality than other babies, and when the first thrill of her excitement had worn off, she became aware of a feeling that her association with the motherhood group was a shade, just a shade, less than that of a member in full standing. It was all conveyed by the nicest, most indetectably refined blend of sympathy and bitchiness. "We're moving," I told Alan about 6 months later. He looked at me for a moment, eyebrows raised. "Where to?" "I've found a place at Hindmere, Surrey. A nice house, slightly bigger, more countrified. Stands higher, said to be better air there." He nodded. "I see," and nodded again. "Good idea." "What do you see?" "It's the other side, the whole width of London in between. What does Mary think about it?" "Not enthusiastic. She's not very enthusiastic about anything these days, but she's perfectly willing to give it a trial." I paused and then added, "It seemed to me the only thing to do. I had a nasty feeling she might be heading for a breakdown. It'll get her out of the influence. Leave that family of hers to wallow in its own fecundity. Give her the chance to make a start on her own footing. In a new place, nobody will know that Matthew isn't her own child unless she chooses to tell them. And I think she's beginning to realize that." "Best thing you could do," Alan agreed. It undoubtedly was. I put new life into Mary. Within a few weeks she had started to take herself in hand, to join things and make new acquaintances, to take a place in her own right. Furthermore, within a year of the move, there had come the first harbinging signs that a baby was on the way. It was I who later broke the news to Matthew, now aged 2, that he had a new baby sister. Rather to my concern, he immediately burst into tears. With some difficulty, I elicited that what he had really hoped for was a baby lamb. However, he managed the readjustment quite easily, and quickly adopted an attitude of responsibility towards Polly. We then became a comfortable and contented family of 4, save for the interlude when we appeared to be 5, because we had pith as well.